Hi, Hime here with my retrospective or recap of my playthrough of Dawn of the Orcs, which is a TTRPG that can be played solo or with a group by Lime and Plasmophage. This is a game in which you are basically creating the backstory and history of the orcs, and this is played across 8 chapters. And so what I am doing is I'm summarizing those 8 chapters and sort of reading through what happened. First, in chapter 1, we created sort of the main characters in the sense of the sage, which serves on the council of sages that helped to create the orcs and sort of steer their development, shall we say. Except since I was playing solo, I only had one sage, and then the chronicler, which again in a group might be a different person. I decided to make the chronicler a character, so my chronicler is a character and my sage is also a character. So the chronicler, which I inadvertently made the character look like a bird, and so my chat was calling them the chronicler. They are a silent observer of the sage who dutifully records all the goings on and witty lines said by the sage. This will be a biography for the ages. No, what are you doing? Don't record that part. So said the sage. And the sage is called Morgath. Morgath is a renowned wizard ex mortis, the greatest wizard and arcane researcher in all of Lania. Unfortunately, someone told them, and now Morgath has an overly big head over it. So Morgath is this sort of gender ambiguous person in a big black cape and hood, so you can't really see their face, but their hood has the 2 little horns coming out of it that have these shiny gemstones at the end of it. So Morgath is a little full of themselves, but they're the ones that brought the orcs into being. How, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you how. In chapter 2, we learned about the creation of the orcs, and so they were forged whole from sorcery. So they were magically created from stardust, rusted metal, and strong feelings of heroism. That last bit is of particular importance. How you might bottle up heroism? That is for Morgath to know and you not to know, a trade secret, shall we say. And then as for how the orcs are controlled, Morgath feared losing control over the orcs upon their death, so the orcs were created to be loyal not to Morgath or to the monarchy, but to an item, an ancient relic that Morgath had that is basically a cracked crystal ball. On occasion, the crystal ball shows images from the past. So this game has 4 stats for the orcs. I think they speak for themselves, but the 4 stats are brute, clever, numbers, and loyalty. And throughout my various decisions, my decisions would increase or decrease these stats. So we started with 1 in numbers and 3 in loyalty. Okay, so in chapter 3, so each chapter follows a similar structure in that you choose 2 of your stats to be a stratagem. That is a bonus that gets added to your dice roll, and then you roll the dice and try to succeed in order to win a victory in the combat or suffer a crushing defeat, and then stuff happens. So the stratagem I chose for this one was numbers and loyalty, since those were my only non-zero stats, and I rolled a victory. The orcs surprised the Styrovites being the opposing force that has invaded Lania, and that is sort of why the orcs were created, was to fend off the Styrovite forces. So anyway, so the orcs surprised the Styrovites and laid waste to their camp, resulting in an overwhelming win and show of their potential. So they were still relatively new and did very well. So as a result of whether you win or lose, you either get 3 warps or 2, and warps are basically adjustments, typically enhancements made to the orcs, but these change in every chapter, and so there are several to choose from, and since I won, I got to choose 3. So these are what I chose and elaborated on. Orcs are hard to kill. They do not feel fear and do not relent. Orcs can march without tiring and survive on very little, low-quality food that Lanians would, not be able to stand. They gain energy from moonlight. Orcs can see by night. The stardust within them lights the way, and the crystal ball beckons them onwards. Shifts are then new things you can choose at the end of every chapter. The shifts are always the same, and you can choose 4, but you wouldn't want to, because there's pairs and two of the shifts basically cancel each other out. So the two shifts I chose, the first one was to enhance their size, so they got larger basically, and so that makes the orcs more formidable because they start off just being normal person size, so I made them a bit bigger. And then the orcs were educated in history in order to support the cause, and the government was hoping to foster anti-Styrovian sentiments to make it easier for them to fight in the war. So after that, their stats changed to have 1 brute, 2 clever, 2 numbers, and 1 loyalty. So they gained these anti-Styrovite beliefs before they acted on orders, but the cause is now more personal and rooted in somewhat biased historical facts. They do not feel fear. Their new skills are that they march without tiring, survive on scraps, and they can see by night. And they went from being Lanian-sized to burly. So just still relatively average size, but now they're just bigger. Okay, then in chapter 4, I chose the stratagem Brute and Loyalty. So basically, the Styrovites kidnapped the royal family and were holding them hostage in the town of Sinosef. And so I chose those 2 stratagems. Unfortunately, rolled a defeat this time. So the orcs arrived in Sinosef, but after a tense standoff, the Styrovites panicked and killed the royal family. The orcs ultimately failed their task and caused a crisis of succession. Morgath was very displeased. And now there's a political crisis because the entire royal family was unfortunately killed, and so they didn't really know who would take over after that. And so there were several years of turmoil. So since I lost, I only got 2 warps. So the warps I chose were that orcs can have children with each other. Some grow quickly into adult warriors. And then I chose the other one where orcs can have children with each other, but some grow and mature at about the same rate as Lanians. So the main takeaway here is that they learned to, be able to have children of their own without Morgath having to create all of the orcs necessarily. Some of the children grow really fast. Some of them grow at regular kind of human rates. And then they were educated further to learn diplomacy because Morgath basically saw, hey, you guys did really bad and the entire royal family was murdered, so let's teach you all some diplomacy, so maybe next time that doesn't happen. Okay. So their final stats after all those choices were 2 brute, 3 clever, 3 numbers, and only 1 loyalty, because every time they were educated, their, brains went up, loyalty went down. Okay, so their new beliefs were the importance in diplomacy and resolving international disputes, or just disputes in general, really, and that it is nice to have strong children for the cause. Their new skills were in procreation, sounds a little silly to say that, but, and diplomacy. In chapter 5, the orcs were kind of holding down the fort in this fortress of Worm Hill, so they were sort of stuck there. So over the course of nearly a year, the orcs defend the fortress of Worm Hill from various attacks from Styrovites and the weather itself. So I chose brute and numbers this time, and I did roll a victory this time. So Morgath spends a season building reinforcement camps, which finally turn the tides and lead to major victory. Yippee. Okay, so then I got to choose 3 warps as a result. So the orcs develop an appreciation for and understanding of wolves, who are trained to work and fight with them. Orcs become enamored with fire, using it for weapons, traps, and acts of terror and sabotage. So they just came to really appreciate fire. And then the last warp is that the orcs learn to forge and design their own weapons for themselves as well as their wolf companions. So they gained more education in blacksmithing, so now they can create and forge and design their own tools and weapons. So after those choices, their stats became 3 brute, 6 clever, 4 numbers, and 0 loyalty. That's loyalty towards Lania. Yikes. So because they had 2 stats that became greater than 4, I had to create 2 customs for them that set them apart from regular Lanians. So the first custom is that they embraced their newfound love of fire, so they give thanks in the morning to the fire in the sky, aka the sun. So they do that every morning. And then their second custom is that orc children do mock debates and trials as part of their early education, because again, diplomacy is important, and that sort of evolved into debate in general. Their new belief is that wolves are friends, and they gain the skills of blacksmithing, using fire, and wolf whispering. Okay, in chapter 6, I chose the stratagems Clever and Number. This was also a victory because at the time, as you saw here, my Clever and Numbers were really high, so it was impossible for me to lose this one. So bands of orcs go deeper into Styrovia, committing heinous acts that nonetheless serve their purpose to demoralize the Styrovites. And they definitely did that. They killed a lot of farmers, laid siege to a lot of towns, right? Few orcs are caught, and riots break out in Styrovia as farms burn across their lands. A victory for the orcs, and for Morgath, and Lania, I guess. Okay, so I won, so we got to choose 3 warps. So to cope with the atrocities they've committed, the orcs adopt a rigid code of honor and a strong social hierarchy. All orcs possess a deep cruelty. Enemies of the cause deserve no quarter or pity. And the orcs are becoming fanatical anti-Styrovite zealots. What will happen when the war is over? When you aren't supposed to fight the Styrovites anymore, what happens when you want to still? Okay, and then I did decide to take a shift this time to once again make the orcs larger, so they grew in size a bit more. And that's something you can do multiple times. I chose not to, but they can go from green goo, if you keep decreasing their size, all the way up to giants. Did not quite make it that far. Okay, so those choices gave them 4 brute, 7 clever, 4 numbers, and 1 loyalty. So that's another one that passed 4, so they got another custom. Each orc is encouraged by their elders and community to make their first kill in order to officially come of age, so you don't become an adult orc until you commit murder. Their new beliefs are their code of honor and their strict hierarchical social status. And then they didn't gain any skills this time. Right, chapter 7, Moment of Truth. So I chose clever and loyalty for this one. I got overly confident and was like, yeah, my cleverness is so high, all I have to do is roll a 2, right? I rolled a 1. Despite all the efforts expended by the orcs and Morgath, the war drags on for many more years. A generation of orcs rises and falls. Ultimately, Styrovia proves too powerful, and Lania, with its weak new king, is forced to swear fealty. The crystal ball is taken as tribute. So this kind of comes full circle where the orcs failed to save the royal family when they were taken as hostages, and it was the poor leadership of the new king that sort of led them down the wrong road. So even though the orcs were very strong, an army can only do so well when its leadership is weak, unfortunately, and so ultimately they lost the war against Styrovia, and Styrovia pretty much took over. So since I lost that battle, I only got 2 warps, so 1. Actually, most of the warps in this chapter were pretty terrible, so I chose ones that made sense for the story. So 1, new laws are written by the Styrovite overlords to control the orcs. Lanians are appointed as enforcers. This is important because even though it's the Styrovites that came up with the laws, what the orcs see is that it's the Lanians that are enforcing them. So it's like, hey, we fought for you for so many years. We were created to serve you in a way, and now you are enforcing these anti-orc laws? That's messed up. And then the second warp is that orcs are forbidden to hold roles of leadership or noble titles. So what was all that fighting for? They, did everything for the Lanians, and what did they get in return? Disdain. So, I took another shift, which was the opposite of educate, and that is to indoctrinate. And I think this is coming more from the Styrovite government. So the Styrovites decided to kind of push for anti-Lanian sentiments in the orcs, and so they're trying to convince the orcs that Lania exploited and oppressed them, and it did not take that much to convince them because, as you saw previously, by this point their loyalty had gotten rather low, so it makes sense that they would believe this rather easily. So after those choices, their stats were at 4 brute, 5 clever, 4 numbers, and -2 loyalty. Holy. So they came up with a new custom, since I had I had 4 in brute, which is to salute every time they behold the flag of Styrovia. It's kind of a sarcastic salute. It's not that they really believe in Styrovia or support Styrovia, but the salute is to just sort of make the Lanians unhappy. Like, hey, we're gonna salute our new overlords, And so their new belief is that Lania was only using them. The war was meaningless. You fight for years and years and years. You're created for this purpose. but then the war's lost, so they're not feeling too good. Okay, so then in the final chapter, chapter 8, so this was an interesting one where I got to roll for the orcs, and I got to choose I chose the clever stratagem, and then I rolled for the Lanians because the orcs decided to go against the Lanians. By this point, anti-orc sentiments had sort of reached a boiling point. Neither side could stand one another, and so we basically had a civil war. And I rolled, and yeah, the orcs got 10 and Lania got -1. In an overwhelming victory, the orcs overthrow the weak Lanian monarchy and establish their own government, where debates settle disputes. Anyone may make suggestions or complaints, but they must win in court. The orcs are master statesmen and eventually settle matters with the Styrovites through diplomacy, and so they debate just became a key part of their government. So there isn't a central ruler or anything, but any adult orc, so you have to come of age, you have to commit murder and come of age, but any adult orc may basically settle things in a court of law where they debate. So if they have any suggestions, hey, I think this law needs to be passed, they have to win a debate. Hey, this guy stole my potato, you have to win a debate. And so it's basically a very trial-based society. Debate is the cornerstone of their culture. And that is the end of the story. So I had this little scratch paper where I was keeping track of the stats going up and down before I recorded them on my sheet. But yeah, so this is the Orc Chronicle. These are the Orc Chronicle sheets that are included in Dawn of the Orcs. There's a form fillable version as well if you buy the game, but I decided I wanted to go analog today for this session, and so I printed these out and did everything with my little dip pen, as well as some marker pens to draw, because I don't know if I could draw with a dip pen, so I did this in marker pen. But yeah, so that was the story of my Orcs of Lania. I'm going to put a link to Dawn of the Orcs in the description of this video, and so I highly recommend you check it out, because the choices I made were a very small selection of the overall choices you could make, and so you could play this game, end up with a completely different backstory for the orcs. And if you end up doing that, please let me know how it goes, because I really enjoyed the storytelling in this game and the way that each chapter really guided you through the decisions, but then there's still stuff left up to chance. And even when you lose, it's not as simple as just, oh, you lose this battle, but sometimes there are great implications for the history or the development of the orcs as well as the country of Lania. And so I think that was done really well, and highly encourage anyone who's interested in solo TTRPGs or world building or orcs really to play Dawn of the Orcs. So yeah, that's about it from me for this. Hope you enjoyed, and again, please check out Dawn of the Orcs. Until next time.